Jared, I'll ask you.
Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. During the question and answer session, please press *1 on your touch-tone phone. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I'll now turn the meeting over to Jared Liu. Thank you, sir. You may begin.
Great. Thank you. And welcome, everyone. This is the Brown Bag Lunch Series. It's a monthly webcast held at the lunch hour. The trainings leverage local successes by amplifying to a larger audience to model organizations' methods, materials, and approaches. Sessions are planned to last no more than 1 hour, with 2 presenters speaking on the same topic from slightly different perspectives, each for about 10 to 15 minutes, followed by 5 to 10 minutes of questions and answers. This is a program of the Alliance for Community Trees, and we encourage you to consider joining if you're not already a member. We do also want to thank our sponsors for the call today, the Home Depot Foundation and the USDA Forest Service. Today's call is on tree sales and giveaways. Tree giveaways and sales are a great way to engage a broad segment of the community, including individual residents, neighborhood organizations, affordable housing agencies, schools, and civic groups. They're also a profitable way to raise funds for efforts to work with these same constituencies. Partnership opportunities don't stop there, though. Businesses can be a distribution point, university agricultural programs can partner as holding stations, volunteers can run the event, and elected leaders may want to link up on canopy cover goals. So we have 2 fantastic presenters today, and the first will be Greg Levine, who is the Program Director at Trees Atlanta. It's all yours, Greg.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Greg Levine. I'm the Program Director at Trees Atlanta, and we're going to be talking today about our the way that we've been successful with tree sales in raising money for 8 straight years, and we're going to be doing our 9th tree sale this upcoming year. The key to doing a tree sale is figuring out if you can actually pull it off by having enough support. And we started off with looking at how many people we could actually send it to on our donor base. That would be a good start in getting people to a tree sale. There were not a lot of plant sales going on in the Atlanta area. We have a great volunteer base. At this point, we have about 3,500 volunteers in our database. And at the time of our first sale, we had probably about 1,200. And the last thing you really need to think about whether this tree sale is right for you is, of course, can you afford to lose money? It can happen. We have not had that happen to us, but a bad weather day, you pretty much will be stuck with a lot of plants, and you've got to be able to either use those plant material or get the plant material back to where it came from. One of the reasons why we were able to be successful in our first tree sales was that we had been around for quite a long time. By the time we'd started our first sale, we had been around for I'd say about 13, 14 years. It's been really great for us because it kind of extended our service or the organization out to a lot more groups by having a tree sale. People who had never been involved with us didn't even realize we were a nonprofit, saw that we were having a fundraiser as a tree sale, so it really helped to market us out to a larger community. The donor benefit is a big part. We have never done anything specifically for the donors as part of the tree sale, but it's something that we offered and were able to mail to our donors for the first time, where we actually had an event that they could come to and actually get some trees and be part of the actual tree planting opportunities without actually coming out on a Saturday morning to do so. We also were able to get the donors trees that they were never been able to find. For those people who are part of the organization because they love trees and love the diversity of it, we certainly have focused on a diversity of trees. Again, a key is if you can't use the trees, you need to be able to get them back to the nursery and have them where they have kind of an exchange, return policy where you give them a certain percentage of the money, but overall you can take the plants back and not lose as much money. Another key part of figuring out if the sale is the right thing for you to do is to give yourself plenty of time. If you can't give yourself 5 to 6 months, then you need to go ahead and put it on for next year's calendar and look into starting it the next year. We usually start our tree sale planning, and this is after 9 years. We still start about early June, and our sale is actually in October. So we're talking about a 5 months time period. It's really key to when you're starting up in that 5 months. First thing you need to do is find a location, and our location is at Piedmont Park. It's a central park in the city. Everybody knows where it is. There's plenty of parking, and they always have let us be there. We've had a good partnership with them, so Piedmont Park has been a great location for us. And the other thing is, for us, we don't sell plants back or give plants back, and we actually buy the plants. So we have our plant sale in the beginning of our planting season. Therefore, if we have leftover plants, or if we had a total rain out or storm, then we would have a place to actually use our trees, because we have projects every Saturday, and that has always worked out for us. We've never had a complete rain out. The most plant material we've ever been left with is somewhere around 2/5 or 1/3 of the plants. You have to, again, with a location, a major component is parking. You can't, even if you have a great transit system, it's hard to carry a 7-gallon tree on the MARTA bus. I don't know if they let you do that or not, but I know I've actually carried box loads of plants on trains before, but you never know what your transit system's going to let you do. So you want to have ample parking. Again, this is something that one of the few things I learned from my father. Location, location, location. Again, you've got to have the right location for the tree sale. Meet with a few people, some key volunteers, some staff, to have a discussion on what is the center of the city, what's an area that people are going to be able to get to with ease. They're going to feel comfortable getting there, and of course, a place that you're going to be able to get permission from. If it's you don't want to start planning a sale without having that location set. There's nothing worse than getting a maybe from somebody and start planning, and you're starting full steam ahead, and then you find out that they've already let someone else use that space, or it's not going to work out. So that's the very, very first thing you need to do. Advertising is key to our success. We've been able to print out posters. We've been on radio show. We have a Walter Reeves garden show in the morning on Saturdays, and he usually, even though he's sponsored by one of our local nurseries, he usually talks about our tree sale the week before and the week of, and he's the radio show in Atlanta that people listen to for garden. Occasionally we've been on TV as the tree sale is going on. You can't count on it, but the Weather Channel has actually been really helpful to us on numerous occasions. They like to what's going on in the city. And of course, mass press release. These work fairly well, but it's always better to follow up. Don't assume that you're going to get some good press. You need to follow up with those people that who've ever helped you out before, and writers, or if you have friends or volunteers, to make sure that you're getting some front page news on some paper. We've been on the front of the garden section before. We get in numerous neighborhood newsletters. We've actually had a small article in a magazine. Unfortunately, it was after the tree sale, so it's really key to know when to get that press release out. Bi-monthly articles need to be sent out 3 months ahead of your tree sale. So getting that list up and really having somebody who's really focusing on that, because that's really a key part. By the way, the early to bed, early to rise is another one of those things my father has shared with me. The marketing is part of the advertisement. We create a pamphlet, and here's an example of one that we have done every year, and it's grown to a more professional 9-color pamphlet every year. It has the trees that are available, gives some key 10 trees. It talks about membership. And we've had the same design group doing it for us for free for the past 7 years. The first year, we had a friend do it. Ordering plants early is really a key component. People really don't think, they order some plants and then they're done, and they often don't go back to it. We have really had a focus on getting multiple plants, varieties, up to 200 we've had on our list. We usually can't even fit them on our pamphlet. We've focused on, we focus on native plants. We do have exotics. I think it's key as an educational component of your tree sale is to make sure that you make a special point that when you're having exotic plant material that it's not an invasive exotic plant material. Anything that's high up on the list of invasives you should never have, and we all need to be cognizant of not letting out plants into the wild that are causing more problems. So again, that's a key piece. You can see we've had ginkgo and Edgeworthia in this picture here, and those Edgeworthia sells in 10 minutes. Ginkgo for the right price sells very well too. We vary the variety. We also vary the size. Some people can't afford to pay $125 for a tree, so we'll have trees that are like anywhere from 1 to 3 gallon, or anywhere from $12 to $18. That's usually our lowest price is $12. Occasionally we'll have something that's just a giveaway thing, and it's like $7. Again, we do a lot of we do a lot of container plants. Containers have worked best for us. Ball burlap, the more you move them around, they break apart, and often they dry out more quickly for us. So we've always worked with containers, and it's really the easiest for us to use. One of the key components too when you're ordering plants is to make an order early, so you're kind of holding those plants, but also to check throughout the time period in that 5 months to make sure they're still holding them for you, and even up to a week before to change the order as needed, or something that maybe end up not working out because the plant material wasn't good or it all died, and actually replacing that with something else that would be similar or that would sell well. One of the things we do also, it's actually during the sale, is we always keep a list of what's sold and what time it's sold. So we'll have a person running with a completely sold out plant and letting the people list it for what time. It helps with making your selection the next year, and that way you know what to sell more of, to what more to buy more of the next year. We also, continuing with on that same note, it's key to use multiple nurseries, so you can obviously pricing plants out, you get the best price. But if you depend on one nursery and they go out of business or they lose stock, then you could be at a big problem, a big jam at the end of the season when you're out to have your sale. We always do a lot of education. We educate our volunteers. We actually have a pamphlet with many of our trees that we want to push. We usually try to push the native shade trees. So in the past, we've actually had volunteers that studied up on oak trees or hickories, so they could, at the time of the sale, they could help customers and kind of push selling those trees. Obviously, we believe that shade trees do the most benefit, so the more we are educated about it, the better salesperson we are. We've create laminated signs. We put photos in an actual sleeve, and we use them year after year, and you can see how we have them on basically a bamboo stake. We have experts, and we usually actually get at least a celebrity expert, garden expert, who will actually help on the day of the sale as well. If you don't know your plants, you really have a hard time answering everybody's questions, and usually knowing your plants helps sell the plants. We always have the tree sale rain or shine. You can see all the plants in that picture. You can't really afford to pack up those plants and try to use them for later projects. It's just best that people know you're going to be there no matter what. Some people are going to show up unless you've got a tornado coming. As soon as you start waving into, we might have it if it's this much rain, or we might not have it, you give people doubt, they won't show up. So again, the show must go on, and make sure you make that very apparent to all the customers and all the volunteers. We usually leave a time from 8 to 2 o'clock, and we usually have 3-hour shifts in the actual tree sale. And it's rare that you're going to have rain all day. So you'll have people scattering through no matter what, especially if you're known for your tree sale. Again, planning early is key. I kind of have a 6-month time period, and kind of step by step. 6 months, you confirm the location. If you can get somebody to help chair the committee, that's great. At 5 months, you'll do your first order. Try to get some sponsorships. We've had a sponsor for the past 3 or 4 years that helps purchase all of our plants. We usually spend about $10,000 in purchasing plants. If you can get a food sponsor, that's great too, because you want to be able to go ahead and get them at the 5 months, because when you have a poster like the one you're seeing here, it's putting the sponsors on there is a key component. At 3 months, you should start working on your press releases, getting them out there, complete your pamphlet, finish your poster design, and then after 2 months, you'll review your plant order for the second time, check with the nurseries to make sure everything's growing and healthy, and that you're going to be able to have all the plants that you've ordered. A good chance to kind of finalize that pamphlet and make changes as needed after you talk to your nurseries. You get your poster printed. We usually do about 300 to 400. We basically have volunteers placing them in everything from grocery stores to retail stores, people's businesses. We've had really a lot of luck, because we usually do a pretty attractive poster. We are finding that that the chains obviously don't put the posters up in key places. The mom and pop shops, the local shops, are more likely to put up posters. It is getting more difficult in the last few years. I don't understand why, but posters have always been a key component for us. And we have had actually a survey as people come to the cash register and we ask them how they heard about the tree sale, and posters is a good 15 to 20% every year. You want to finalize your descriptions and your photos for the actual plants that you're going to be selling. You want to make sure that those are printed and ready to go. Again, you want to stay ahead of the game. Don't wait till the last week and it comes up on you pretty fast if you're not prepared. The week of the sale, again, since we've already done all this work, most of it's just getting logistics organized. We basically, the week before, we'll send out a volunteer email getting people to sign up, because for our volunteer events, it's probably the most specific on what people will be doing, volunteers will be doing that day. So you want to go ahead and get that schedule ready to go basically at the beginning of the week. So sending it just like the Friday beforehand is a good way to start. We reconfirm our delivery dates. We make sure that we have the right times, the right days, and that the nurseries are clear on directions and everything else. We've had trucks come at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock on Friday, and it has been our biggest order before. And there's nothing worse than staying up till 12 o'clock moving trees in the dark. So you really want to make sure those deliveries are on time. Finalizing that volunteer schedule, we usually like to try to get it out by early Wednesday. That way, if we have to make some small changes, we have plenty of time to do that. On Thursdays, we usually try to schedule our biggest deliveries. What we'll do if the big deliveries come in on Thursday, we'll go ahead and start putting the trees out in their actual locations that they are set at. If the big delivery gets done on Friday, more than likely we'll just place all the trees together and not move them until the next day. If you get that huge delivery on Thursday, don't wait till Friday to start putting them out in the specific locations. If you do that, you're going to be, again, up till 9 or 10 o'clock on a Friday. We organize our trees in alphabetical order. We try to split them up as much as we can of trees that can handle a lot of shade or need a lot of shade, and trees that need sun. We also do some shrubs and vines. Our vines are purely native vines. We don't do any vines that aren't native. we found that working in some of our forest restoration projects, that almost all exotic vines end up being a problem later. So again, we stay with the native vines. So we separate the vines separately out, but we put our trees and shrubs together, sun, shade. We put all of our products that we need, all of our materials. We bring them on the Friday beforehand. We put them in our vehicles. We don't leave them out. You have more chances of something happen to them, and that could be a real problem for you on Saturday morning. So we plan on basically being there Saturday morning really early. We do have a group that sleeps overnight. It's usually, I think our second or third plant sale, we did have some vandalism. So after that, we started camping out, and sometimes we play games, eat, and I'm sure some other things happen sometimes to the people tenting out. But they usually have a good time, and I usually have to wake them up if I'm out staying there overnight. This is Swarthmore actually. Swarthmore College has a great tree sale, and that's where we got a lot of our information from. And they had like 15 or 20 people camping out, and it was quite a party. We also, the day before the sale, we get all the pictures and photos in order. We do not place them out on the Friday because if it rains or if you have dew in the morning, they get wet and they messes up the pictures. So we get them in order. We go over them the day before to make sure they're matching up with the plants, and then Saturday morning we start putting them out. Key component, at least in Atlanta, you got to make sure everything's watered in on Friday. If you don't water at all in those 2 days that you're preparing, you're going to have some plants that look really, really sad, and sad plants don't sell unless you have one of those days you have 80 people waiting for you the next morning. The actual part of the sale that's key, the key point is volunteers. Know what your volunteers are capable of, both good and bad. Make sure you have the right volunteer doing the right position as far as there are a lot of duties that day. And if you don't know a volunteer, have them working more towards the less expert components, more muscle kind of things. Friendly, patient people are going to be helping. If you know somebody's just a likable person, stick them with a person. They can actually help people move plants around, chat with them, help them buy more plants. Obviously, strong people should be lifting plants. Don't ever have a volunteer you don't know working with money. It's a sad part of life, but money is one of those things that you just want to have no worries about, and that means having volunteers that you have all the trust in and that you've known for a long time. Make sure, again, with the experts, that the experts have, you can see John McFarland in the middle. He's been volunteering for about 13 years. John basically just talks to people about plants, and he's a really great salesperson. Make sure that you have those experts out there because it kind of gives people a point person for both volunteers and people who are buying trees. Put an orange vest on them. It's easy to point out. Everybody else you can see is wearing green shirts, and there's all regular volunteers that you see. The ones that are wearing the Trees Atlanta shirt are volunteers that have been volunteering for years. For volunteers that haven't been volunteering so long, you just want to make sure they have the same colored shirt so they stand out, and you can immediately point them to helping out customers, or if there's an issue or a problem or something that needs to be done, they're easy to pick out. So I'm going to go over real quickly because I'm sure my time is running out. A few of our duties are cashier assistant, kind of write up the cashier assistant writes up the tickets before they get to the cashier. An expert, we've talked about them. Salespeople, I mean, literally we have about 8 to 10 salespeople in the beginning of the day, and they run out literally person to person. And they just, they raise their hand, say they can help, and somebody grabs them. They run with the people because we usually have quite a bit of people in line. Of course, salespeople. We have a hold area, and it's pretty simple. We have a ribbon that goes around the trees. It has a time when the trees were put there. The person who who is holding those trees. After 30 minutes, if we haven't heard from those people, we start to put the plants back. We don't hold trees very long. They can always come back and put another time on there, but they've got to come back within 30 minutes. Sold and load area, usually we put the strong backs. A lot of times we have young kids helping in that area. Not young kids, but like teenagers. Organizers, one of the things that I think is key as well is making sure it stays neat and looks neat, pulling trees to the front, keeping the lines in order, pulling plants forward, because people will pick out plants throughout a line of plants, and it gets really loose and sloppy. You don't want that to happen. And we have an information desk, and usually it's a good place for new people, but the woman to the right, Sue Sherrill, she's been at the information desk for about 5 or 6 years, which is great to have a volunteer doing the same thing every year, year after year, because you don't have to worry about that particular part of the tree sale. Finally, the day of the sale, make sure you get there with plenty of time to get ready. You never know what problems you might have. I get there anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hours before the sale starts, as well as a few other staff people do that. Some volunteers will get there 2 hours beforehand. We basically have 2 hours to get everything set up. We have all the materials out. We'll put the tables out, the tent up. We have the bamboo stakes already out. You can see Lenny here. He actually has tape under his chin, and he's taping on the description of the plant. And then somebody will be right behind him, placing the picture of the trees. And we just basically have like 6 people running through and doing that. You want to make sure you leave about 10 minutes before the sale, going again, reminding people of their duties, even though you've emailed those out prior that week. Just run over, make sure everybody knows what they're doing. And then the last thing you want to do is talk to the crowd. Obviously, being polite to everyone, telling the crowd to do that. We've actually had people fight over trees, and it's kind of humorous, but it's really not appropriate. We ask them to spend a lot of money, tell them our mission, and we also, the last thing I talk about is plants that did not come in, so people aren't running around looking for them, and then the plants that we replaced them with, so some surprise plants. You can see this is a good year. We had about 50 people in line. And you can also see the ground is kind of wet, so it actually rained that morning. But we've had a pretty successful tree sales. We've raised anywhere from $12,000 to actually $30,000 on a 6-hour event. So that's pretty much it. And good luck with y'all's future tree sales.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. This is very comprehensive. If the operator can open the lines for questions and answers, please.
Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1. To withdraw your question, press star 2. You will be prompted to record your name clearly, which is required to introduce your question. One moment, please, for the first question.
Great. And some people have already asked, too, if the presentations will be available afterwards, and they will be. They'll be back on ACT's website. So if you are furiously scratching notes away and you're sure it's in the presentation, rest assured it'll be available. I also want to mention, too, that we're starting a new aspect of the webcast. It's called the Network Exchange. It's the idea that there's a lot more you can learn from being on the ground as opposed to on a webcast, and from being on location for a week as opposed to on a call for an hour. So the idea is that you have the opportunity to travel to Trees Atlanta, who has offered to host up to 5 people. You'd have the opportunity to travel there to learn a lot more about how it is that they do a tree sale and giveaway. So I'll send details more about that with the follow-up email, but just know that that's available. So with that, we have a question. Do donors buy the trees or get them as a donor? What were the problems you ran into?
Do donors buy trees? The donor basically gives us in the past, has given us a lump sum of money to kind of sponsor the tree sale. Donors that are like are basically our donor base. They are buying all the trees, yes. We have one major donor that basically pays for all the trees, and then donors, we send out these pamphlets to our donors, and they basically are major purchasers of our tree sale. And this year we're actually going to try to have a day early where they can come and actually look at the plant material and get a first chance to buy for 2 hours at the end of Friday.
Okay. And was the 12 to 32,000 gross or net income for Trees Atlanta?
We have actually we have net. The highest we've net I think was 27,000. We have taken in over $40,000 in a day at these tree sales. So it's just kind of scary when you have that much money sitting around a park. But we have actually net. I think the highest is $27,000, and without that $10,000 donor that we've had in the past, we've still brought in as much as 22 or 23,000 without that donor. And that is net and not gross.
Okay. Any complaints from nurseries that you're unfairly competing or taking business away from them?
Never. We actually we're buying from wholesale nurseries, so we're certainly helping them out. It is a one-time deal, and we've literally never gotten. Actually had people even put the posters in their actual. Some of the smaller nurseries actually put our posters up.
And following on the nursery question, I thought it was interesting you were going into how you exchanged the trees back at a discounted price. Was that the first iteration of the partnership that came up, or did it go through several ideas first, and that's finally the one that worked?
I have not. We've never done it that way, but I know that some people will have plant sales where the nurseries will actually bring them in, and they'll get a portion of the funding, whatever sells, and the nurseries take it back out. And I've also heard of where they will buy whatever they actually sell, and then whenever they don't sell, the nurseries will pick it back up, and they'll give them a small cost. It's like almost like a rental fee. Okay.
What would you say are the key things to be aware of and avoid?
I'm trying to be, I guess, politically correct in my answer here. I'd say don't have. I mean, I can't think of any other way. Don't half-ass do it. You got to really look at every component. Sorry for that word. I can't think of anything else. But you got to plan every component of it. Don't think you're going to throw it together, especially those first few years. I think a lot of the times people they just don't think of everything. They've never worked a tree sale before. If they've never had the experience of doing it, you really should go to a tree sale and help out for a day. I have worked out, I think, 3 different sales before I actually did this one, started this one. And what was the other part of that question, Jared? Sorry.
It was, what would you say are the key things to be aware of and avoid?
As far as you want to pick a dry month. You want to make sure that you have, I personally don't think tree sales in the spring, they're great because, things are flowering, you might sell them a little bit better, but you get stuck with a lot of material if you don't have that return policy. And also, I think that might bother the nurseryman more than having it in the fall. If people are worried about upsetting a nursery person, they do their springtime is Christmas for the retail nurseries. Fall is not as big a deal to them. Obviously every month is important, but you might have more problems with the nursery trade.
Okay. Do you provide planting instructions?
We do. We have we've used the the ISA pamphlets that they have about they have pruning, planting, and all those things. We also usually have our own planting pamphlet. We have volunteer experts who will actually have actually helped plant plants as well for people if they're in town. We charge $25 a plant to plant plants, and volunteers will do that. We also have that information booth, so we do a little bit of everything.
Okay. Does the operator have any questions?
We do. There's one question from Dave Mankey. Your line is open.
First of all, Greg, I'd like to commend you. I think you did a very nice job in your presentation, and those of us up north, just south of the Arctic Circle up here in Minnesota, would certainly like to get something like this off the ground. My question is, coming from multiple nurseries, which is obviously a good thing so you don't alienate yourself with just using one source, How do you address the warranty guarantee scenario when the people say, well, is the tree or the plant or the shrub warranted, and is there identification as to who they would go back to, and do they address the volunteer organization?
We have never had somebody ask us for that. It is, I mean, we kind of use we're a nonprofit. We believe we're using nurseries that are the highest quality nurseries, and we wouldn't be buying these plants if they weren't. If somebody's ever, I think maybe once or twice in 8 years, we've had somebody say that the plant didn't leaf out, and then we'll order a new plant for them, or get it for them in the fall. And we've never had anybody really worried about a warranty. If I've ever heard it, I'll probably give a sassy, smart answer like we're not Home Depot. Now that Home Depot is great for taking back plants, but we can't really afford to do that.
We have to be careful. We have to remember that Home Depot is one of the major.
Right, and they're great for doing it, but we can't afford to do it.
No, exactly.
My point.
But
we love Home Depot and have always,
Here in Minnesota, every one of the nurseries use that as kind of flaunting and waving their flag. That, of course, they have tremendous quality stock and merchandise, but they also do flaunt the fact that they are completely warranted for X number of months or years or something. So.
Yeah, and again, the big retail outlets can afford to do that, but we can't do that. We don't even have enough of a receipt policy and all that kind of thing. If somebody really, I guess it's easier if you have a customer that's really difficult, who comes back to you and is upset, just to give them their money back or find them another plant. So we just have never gotten into that. And it's something that big retail stores can do, but again, we're a nonprofit group. I would just steer away from it.
Great, thanks, Dave. All right, does the operator have any more questions?
There's one other question from Jen Bruler.
All right, we'll take that, and then we'll go on to Patrick.
Jen, your line is open.
All right, thank you very much. I just had a question about the demographic of the participants and people who come to buy trees, and whether it's changed over the years, or who's coming to buy trees and who are you reaching out to?
Well, we put posters out all over the city, and we actually even put them a little bit outside our perimeter. We have a perimeter. We try to get them out into some of the more urban areas, I guess little urban districts outside the city. We do focus on the urban areas. In the past, we have really had a focus on our actual members. I think they've about bought out, so we really had to start extending to try to get to the community at large. A lot of times, I mean, the majority of people that come to the tree sale just are, your garden enthusiasts. Occasionally, we have people who are trying to get cheap trees, and we try to price things that they're maybe a little less than your actual nurseries, but I would say there is no certain type of person besides usually they love plants. We have, I guess, more probably in your 30 to 60-year-old range. I mean, there's not a lot of people who are, I guess, owning homes much under 30, but I mean, it's all over the place. People who I've had a little girl, a little 6-year-old girl who came out and spent her entire allowance on different types of trees because she is a lover of trees. But for the most part, it's people of mid-age, and usually urban. It's usually the urban people that get to our tree sale.
Okay, thanks, Greg. I was just amazed how much it sounds like planning a wedding.
It is. It's like a big volunteer project as well.
Yeah.
So
we're going to move to the next presenter, but if you do have questions still for Greg, hold on to those. We will have questions and answers at the end for either presenter, or go ahead and type them into the question manager, and we'll make sure to get to them. So our second presenter today is Patrick Hayes. Patrick has served as the Executive Director of the Park People since 2002. Previously, he was the statewide Director of Development for the National Audubon Society in Colorado. He holds a master's degree in environmental policy and management from the University of Denver and an undergraduate degree in journalism. Under his leadership, the Park People's annual budget is more than doubled, and funding for the Denver Digs Trees program, once limited to city money, has broadened to include a host of large national corporations and added support through community development funds. In 2007, the Park People was recognized as Colorado's Conservation Organization of the Year by Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado. When not at work, Patrick spends time hiking in the beautiful Rocky Mountains, working on his 1920 bungalow, spoiling his dog, who I think we heard earlier, guitar, and pursuing his pilot license. All yours, Patrick.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Greg. That was a great presentation. And our program, I'd just like to say, it kind of leads towards a tree sale, but is not tree sale focused. So I appreciated Greg's presentation and learned a lot about all the success that Trees Atlanta has had for their tree sale. We have a lot to learn. The Denver Digs Trees program was a program that actually started back in the 1980s out of a few neighbors' garages. And the objective of the program from its origins was to add trees to the streets of Denver and to use trees kind of as a catalyst to strengthen neighborhood ties and neighborhood bonds. The program that started out of garages grew substantially in the late 1980s when, under Mayor Pena, a substantial bond measure was passed, which included more funding for public street trees. And so at that time, the very modest program was able to grow and started to up its numbers and work citywide as opposed to in just specific neighborhoods. So my presentation this morning, or this afternoon I should say, is going to focus on our street tree program, and then I'll touch a little bit on our tree sale at the very end. So again, the objective of Denver Digs Trees is to increase the number of trees along the street. And the city of Denver has certain ordinances that affect planting in the public right-of-way. And so the city of Denver is a very close partner of ours with this program, and I'll get to their role a little bit later. But again, just to give a quick overview real quick of what the Denver Digs Trees program accomplishes, we distribute between 1,200 and 1,500 street trees every year through our program. We promote our program to new homeowners. We have a database of over 15,000 names that we mail to. We work directly with neighborhood organizations and community groups who are interested in organizing greening projects in their neighborhood. So people come to learn about the program through various methods, sometimes through the city forestry office if they've been asked to remove a tree on their public right-of-way. So we get people involved through a whole host of venues. And the interesting thing about the Denver Digs Trees program is because it's focused on street trees is we really do there is a finite number of places for us to place trees in the city. And assuming that people who get a tree from us once have a success with that tree, we actually kind of lose a customer with each successful participant that we have. So every year we're having to identify, 1,000 new people to add trees along the curbside. We are a staff of just 2 people here, so we rely very, very heavily on volunteers. That has always been the emphasis of our organization and this program. We have over 400 volunteers who participate each year. Some of them do everything. Some of them focus on just one thing. We do outreach in underserved neighborhoods starting in the fall. We have another set of volunteers who help go out and visit all of the street tree request sites to make sure that the proper spacing is being adhered to that the city of Denver requires. And then we have our big tree distribution in the spring where we have 6 different sites. We have volunteers work there. And then we also send volunteers out in the late summer, early fall to do survival checks on the spring trees. About 4 years ago, we started a new initiative to focus special resources on the underserved communities in Denver. In 2000, American Forest came to Denver and included us in one of its urban ecosystem analyses. And one of the things that was discovered, really to no surprise, is that the lower income neighborhoods have a lower tree canopy because tree replacement doesn't occur at the same rate. And sadly, also the underserved communities were not, didn't have as high a home ownership percentage, and also were not receiving kind of the focus of community and public endeavors to beautify those areas. So we took it as our special charge to help close some of those equity gaps. So we have been offering street trees for free. This year we added some neighborhoods. We have over 20 neighborhoods in Denver where residents can get a free tree to plant along their street, and we have been fortunate to be able to get some special funding to help that happen through our neighborhood and Housing and Neighborhood Development Services Department out of the city, through some CDBG funding and some other special funding that they have available for underserved communities. Again, because of our small staff, in addition to volunteers, we rely very heavily on productive partnerships. We incorporate education into our program as well. We have free planting and care workshops in advance of our tree distribution in the spring. A couple years ago, we produced a National Arbor Day award-winning tree planting and care guide called Sapling in the City. I have that in PDF form. If anyone wants to email me, I'd be happy to get you an electronic version of that. Everyone gets a copy of that. And then the maintenance is the requirement of the residents and the agencies where we plant. The partnership with the City of Denver I mentioned earlier is important because we are kind of through their good graces allowed to do what we do. The City Forestry Office advises us on the proper species to plant in the right-of-ways. Some examples of trees not allowed or anything that drops heavy fruit. And then there's some other species like silver maples that just when they get old start to deteriorate and become hazardous. The arboreal inspectors for the city actually serve as our volunteer training resource. So they, every February, hold the trainings for our volunteers to teach them how to go out and properly mark a site for street trees. The Department of Parks and Recreation hosts us every spring at 6 different sites, 5 parks and then the city nursery where we do our tree distribution. So whereas Trees Atlanta has a very large central site, we spread ourselves out across the city and then, of course, have a smaller capacity at those 6 sites. And then forestry staff is also on hand at all of those sites to answer questions, and they serve as our experts to give people advice on their trees. Species selection is a little bit of a challenge for us. One of the things I like to tell people that's interesting about Denver is as you drive around Denver, almost every tree that you put your eyes on, someone planted. We're in the high arid plains. Trees are not really native here. We have, of course, cottonwoods and alder and some of the riparian species that occur naturally, but otherwise we're living in an entirely built environment out here. And that's why trees are so important to compensate for the built environment. So the challenge is that our climate is not terribly conducive to trees. And I know that Atlanta had a dry year last year and hoping better for you folks this year, but just to compare our annual precipitation with Atlanta's to give you a little bit of an idea of the challenges we face just in selecting tree species that will thrive here. So when you consider our climate and then some of the restrictions that we have to deal with for street trees, our palette gets limited. Also because of our climate, we don't really have any local growers. The local growers that are out here just produce very, very limited stock. We order about 3,000 trees every year. In order to get those quantities and also the selection, we order our trees from 2 nurseries out in eastern Oregon, Spear & Sons and Schichtel's Nurseries. And we're actually one of their larger customers out here in Colorado. Even though we have just a one-time order with a stock of 300, we actually are able to compel pretty competitive pricing from them. We place our tree order almost a full year in advance just because of availability. So we'll start here actually just in a couple of months talking about which varieties we want to offer for the spring and get those tentative orders in and then get them finalized by fall. The stock that we deal in, again, we deal just only in trees. We don't offer any other plants or shrubs. We deal in 1 to 1 1/4 inch caliper. We deal with this size because it's easy for one person to plant these trees, and it also makes an immediate landscape impact. Also, because most of these trees are going along the street, we need something of at least a substantial enough size to try to survive any sort of bumps and bruises it might get during the course of its growing. It's also, they're very cost-efficient sizes. And we order both bare root and bald and burlap trees. Bare root is a little bit of a struggle to get people educated about the advantages of planting bare root. Of course, for us, it helps us deal in larger numbers. And actually, bare root trees tend to have a larger percentage of the root system intact as opposed to the roots of bald and burlap trees or container trees that are sometimes have to get cut back to fit into their vessel. Oops. So here's just a partial list of some of the varieties we deal with for any of our friends out here west who are dealing with the same kind of limited palette. We had a very severe drought here in Denver a few years ago, and we tried to start to limit our varieties to those that were considered very drought hardy. Have learned along the way that that's not an exact science. There are so many conditions that affect whether a tree will do well or not. Soil conditions, sun exposure, so on and so forth. Not to mention just care, people watering their trees. Another thing, we had a visitor come out here from Ohio a few years ago. She was worked in the forestry department out in Ohio, and for some reason the question of watering trees came up, and she found it quite curious that we needed to water our trees out here, because in Ohio, of course, you just stick a tree in the ground and let it alone and let it take care of itself. But out here we do have to hand water our trees if they're not otherwise in an irrigation zone, just because of the low precipitation. Our program schedule is pretty intense. We start again in the fall with outreach in our targeted neighborhoods with our volunteers. We do this twice a month for 3 months. We have volunteers go out and flyer underserved neighborhoods and just promote the program and let them know who to call to get a free tree for their street. We mail our request forms out literally the first mail day of the year. We have our site inspection training then in February, our educational efforts in March. In April, we send out our approval letters, and we unload the trees over the course of 2 days at our 6 sites. And then we have our distribution day and tree sale. In May, we do kind of cleanup administration, giving refunds to people who paid for a street tree and didn't get approved. In June, we try to catch our breath a little bit. Then in July, start looking towards next year, do survival inspections in the late summer and early fall, and then it all starts again with neighborhood outreach. So you can kind of enter this schedule wherever you want to. I started it in the fall just because that's kind of when we consider our season to begin. I should mention also that our street tree program, we ask people to pay $20 for every tree that they request, and the $20 in some cases covers the cost of the tree, but in most cases does not. And so we haven't raised that fee in, like 7 years. And we've been very fortunate we haven't had to because of the charitable support that we've gotten from our sponsors and donors. And so the philanthropic support becomes very important just to keeping the program affordable. We want to make sure that we make it very attractive price-wise, just because we really do want to encourage people to plant. And so we're trying to, in our underserved neighborhoods, completely eliminate any sort of financial obstacle that would keep a person from being able to plant a tree, but otherwise ask people to make a modest financial investment. And then finally, our tree sale. The great thing about our program is our street tree customers, which number upwards of 1,000, become kind of ready-made customers to then, when they show up to get their street tree, they can buy other trees. So we have every year a ready-made customer base through our street tree participants. We sell our trees at about a $20 to $25 profit margin per tree, and our gross receipts vary one year to the next, 40 to 50,000 on average. And again, those are gross receipts. By far, the most popular out here are, and mainly just because they're so rare out here because of the climate, are the ornamental varieties. And as Greg mentioned, the biggest downside is that the sale is just very unpredictable, and we always have leftover trees, and we actually don't have the ability to return any of our stock. So if we don't sell all of our trees, we'll cut the prices and have we're lucky enough to be able to extend our stay at some of our park sites. So we can kind of have a fire sale if we need to. We don't like to do that, but we really need to get the trees in the ground. So the City Forestry Office has kindly accommodated us the last few years and let us store trees through the summer at one of their facilities, and we use that stock for a fall planting project. So it's worked out pretty well, but I would say that our tree sale, the worst part of it is just the unpredictability of it, and not really being able to predict how many you're going to have left over. And we do a lot of advertising as well, and get a pretty good turnout every year, but again, at the end of the day, you're never quite sure how many trees you're going to have left. So that is the end of my PowerPoint, and I'd welcome any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Patrick. And if Angel can open up the lines for questions, please.
Thank you. We will again do a question and answer session. If you'd like to ask a question, press *1, record your name. One moment for the first question, please.
Great. And we've got a couple questions in the queue that I think are applicable to both speakers, so both answer them. First is, how do you recommend keeping track of the inventory throughout the day?
We don't. From trees and Island standpoint, what we do is one of the volunteers' jobs is we're at one site for the tree sale. Is when a bamboo stake has no plants behind it and it's sold out, and they take the photo and the description and give it to the information desk, and they write that they're out of plants, and they write what time they ran out. And that's the only thing we do as far as keeping up with inventory.
Yeah, our inventory similarly, it's pretty loose. It's a little difficult to keep track of. Our system for buying trees is people actually go up to a counter. There's a poster there with all of the trees and descriptions. They pay their money, and then they actually get a ticket specific to which tree they've purchased. And then they take that ticket and they exchange it for a tree at the site, at the location on the site where the trees are held. And so whenever we're out of tickets, we know that we're out of trees. But frankly, there are a lot of mistakes made. A volunteer might grab a Norway maple instead of a sugar maple and stuff like that. So we don't have quite as much room to spread out. So the trees get kind of crowded, and mistakes are made. But generally, everyone makes it work as best we can. And from time to time, we might make a mistake that needs to be rectified, but it manages to work itself out.
Okay. What are the most effective ways to get people to the sale? Have you seen a drop-off when existing members are just planted out?
Well, again, the nice thing about our program with our street tree recipients is we get those fresh faces there every year, about 1,000 fresh faces, and some of those buy trees and some don't. It's the broader general advertising that's a little bit harder for us to control in terms of what kind of turnout we get. We do print $5 coupons in our ads to try to generate traffic. But I would say that our tree sale traffic is pretty consistent in terms of number of people. And from time to time, like last year was the year that our mayor announced his Million Tree Initiative, so we got a lot of kind of ancillary press last year, and so we did quite a bit better with our tree sale last year than we did this year. So kind of those other factors affect us as well.
I guess for us, it's just to diversify that advertisement. We we did see kind of a cool down as far as members, members coming to buy trees, and so we really kind of pushed trying to get some radio advertisements, some posters out outside the city community, and a little bit into some of the counties and cities adjacent to the city of Atlanta. But I think a lot of it is just getting the word out there. If you have in our case, if we have a really nice weather day, then we usually have no problem selling at least 3/4 of the material.
Okay. How many total programs does the Park People offer, and what percentage of your staff's time is dedicated solely to the Denver Digs Trees program?
Our organization, in addition to the Denver Digs Trees program, which is about 60% of our budget, also raises private money for public park projects. In fact, just last night we did a dedication for a new tennis center, a $4.8 million project for the city of Denver. We've also invested in recreation programs for youth. So we also are one of the sponsors for City Park Jazz, which is a summertime concert series in Denver City Park. So in addition to the tree program, we raise the private money for parks and rec programs and projects as well. And then we also serve as kind of the public advocate for parks and rec. So we serve on task forces and committees that deal with parks-related matters here in Denver. We host public forums to discuss matters related to the Parks and Rec system that are of interest to the program. Of the staff makeup here is myself, and then we have a full-time program manager, and the full-time program manager is 100% dedicated to the Denver Digs Trees program. And then my time allocation is, I would say, depending on the time of year, sometimes the tree program is 100% of my time as well, and then other parts of the time I'm dealing with other things. But I would say, on average, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50% of my time is dedicated to the tree program as well.
Okay, and I think for either of you, do you offer pre-event sales, and do you bring receipt and pickup?
This year we are going to offer a pre-event sale. We're going to try Friday at 4 o'clock. Members of Trees Atlanta that donated over $500 in the past year can come in to the pre-sale. And in the past, we also had tried where people could pre-order, and we had like 12 trees that you could pre-order, and it was a little bit too much work for not that much. You didn't get much out of it. You had to hold orders for people, and holding plants during a tree sale was already confusing, so that didn't work particularly well for us. And what was the other part of that, Jared? I'm sorry. No, it
was bring receipt and pickup. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we actually deliver trees and we plant, but on a small basis, and we do a little bit of everything.
We've tried to do pre-sales as well, as Greg mentioned, where you could pre-order, and again, the volume really didn't justify the workload. It did become a little bit confusing, and so it's something we tried once, and it didn't. We didn't have a whole lot of response, and it created some hassles on event day. So, yep.
All right. And does the operator have any questions in queue?
I am showing no questions from the phones.
Okay. Well, we are past the hour, so I'm going to wrap it up. I've got a couple questions in queue, and I'll follow up with the speakers on those two questions and get those answers sent out. But we do like to try to hold it to an hour because we know everyone's time is precious. So I want to thank Greg and Patrick for presenting today. Again, the presentations and the recorded session will be available within about a week of the session. I'll send out an email when those are ready. We have a quick survey. If you can complete that, I know the link is long, so I'm going to email that around as well. So if you can fill that out, that really helps us to continue to develop these programs, and I'd really appreciate that. The next webcast session is Technology in the Urban Forest. It's on June 19th. And otherwise, thank you again to Greg and Patrick. Thanks to everyone who joined as a participant, and thanks to our sponsors, the Home Depot Foundation and the U.S. Forest Service.
Thank you.
Thanks.